Good morning and welcome all. It's a privilege to have you join us today as we will be discussing a very intriguing topic, big tuskers and rhinos of Africa. Organized by Classic Travel, your trusted travel partner and advisor for all outbound travel services. Before we get started with the webinar, let's go over the house rules. If you wish to ask a question, please use the chat option. You may post your question on the chat at any point of the session, and they will be answered as we progress along with our webinar. All right. To host this webinar, we are very happy to introduce our very own acclaimed wildlife photographer, Rajiv Walikela. He has been a tour leader with over 20 years of experience in photography and travel in Sri Lanka and the world over. He is currently working at Classic Travel, where he is heading the inbound wildlife and luxury travel experiences, and he also leads specialized wildlife tours worldwide. He held his debut solo exhibition in 2013 titled Wildlife Diaries, and in 2015 launched his first coffee table publication titled Children of Eden. He is a regular contributor to newspapers and magazines in Sri Lanka. And now we would like to welcome our very special guest, Dr. Johan Marais, who is an award-winning veterinarian, CEO of the Saving Survivors. He is also the author of a number of amazing books, The Great Tuskers of Africa and In Search of Africa's Great Tuskers, to name a few out of many wonderful reads. While Dr. Johan shares a love for photography, he is a man who has dedicated his skills and knowledge to rescuing countless innocent wildlife and tackling the poaching crisis that's continuously occurring in Africa. He is truly a hero of our time and deserves worldwide recognition for his work. Welcome, gentlemen. We are ready to start. So let's sit back and enjoy. I will now hand over the reins to Rajiv. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Nicola, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this interesting wildlife chat. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy during this time, and welcome, Johan, and it's an honor to have you in this session. You've been one of my wildlife heroes for a very long time, and as a young man at 21 years old, I ordered your book. Great Tuskers of Africa from Amazon, and I've been fascinated all along. And I still remember how I wrote to you asking, not expecting a reply, how I can find some big tuskers in Africa, and you immediately responded. So that our friendship, I think, has lasted for a long time. And welcome, and thank you very much. So. Start off with would you let us know how you got your passion for wildlife and conservation?
Good morning, Rajiv, and good morning to everyone that is logged in. It's really a pleasure to actually join you guys this morning here from South Africa. Yes, I grew up partly in Namibia. My father was a game ranger in Etosha, and I think my love for wildlife and for rhino and for elephant really started there. I can still clearly remember, countless mornings, when I went with my father, and we drove in the veld or in the field in the bush, and I saw, elephants walking or rhino. At one particular instance, I remember. There were black rhino in Bomas, and it was one of his responsibilities to actually look after these black rhino, and that just amazed me at such a young age to see these huge animals and these iconic animals, so close up. With him being a ranger in the park, obviously we could drive off-road and we could drive closer to animals, and it just it was stunning to me as a young child at that age, to see these animals. And I think really my love for especially elephants started at that age. And I clearly remember when I was in primary school, he asked me one particular day, so what do you want to be, one day when you grow up? And I said, well, I really want to be like you. I want to be a game ranger. And he said, yeah, it's a wonderful job, but it doesn't earn a lot of money. So is there maybe something else that you can look at? And obviously, the very next thing is I said, well, then I want to be a veterinarian. And luckily, I got selected in standard 9 when I applied for veterinary science here in South Africa. And I think things just actually progressed from there. With my love for especially elephant.
Oh, that's what was the first big tusker you saw, the 100-pounder?
So that's quite interesting, Rajiv. So at that stage, when we were in Namibia, and even when we came back to South Africa, at that stage, South African national parks used to have a little, let's call it a little booklet or a little newsletter that actually came out monthly. That was called Custos, and Custos means custodians of nature, and that was what they're doing and what they're still doing today. And in there, I think probably the father of big tuskers, if you can call it that, must probably surely be Anthony or Martin, because he came up from Addo National Park, where we know there's elephants with very few ivory, especially females, because they were hunted out to about only 15 animals. And he came up to Kruger, and they told him of a real big tusker in the north, and he said, I do not believe that. And they flew him there, and I think it was Mafunyan that he saw. Okay. And he was just, taken aback that there are elephants with this massive ivory. And I think that's where the Magnificent Seven started. He then started publishing that in this newsletter, the Magnificent Seven with Mafunyan and Zombo and Duslamiti and all those elephants. Yeah. And one day I was paging, through this magazine, and I saw this, and I just thought by myself, that is the most magnificent animal I've ever seen. Because as we know, in Etosha, because there's such low humidity there, you do not find bulls with big ivory there. It breaks really easily. Whereas on the east coast of Africa, because of the humidity, when you drop a piece of ivory, it will bounce. Whereas on the west coast of Africa, mostly, Namibia, Angola, because of the dryness, if you drop a piece of ivory, it will shatter. All right, so it breaks much easier that side. And then I realized, but there are still some of these bulls in the wild. And then eventually these bulls died, and I think there were 2 that were poached, and I was quite disappointed, because at that stage we didn't really visit Kruger National Park until I got married, and I think in 1993 my wife and I were just going to Kruger National Park, and we were just doing a normal game drive, and we came round a corner, and I saw this bull standing in tall grass, and you could just see these massive pillars of ivory actually going into the grass. And I thought, wow, this must be 100-pounder. And he was standing underneath a tree, and we waited probably for about 10-20 minutes, and he actually started walking across the road. And I promise you, his ivory was probably 5 centimeters from the ground, and that was Chokwan. So that was the very first 100-pounder I saw, and that, by the way, was also the bull that actually charged very well that you also know, Darryl Balfour, and almost killed him. but that was
Yes.
before I saw him. But that was the very first big tusker, that I saw. And what a magnificent elephant. Unfortunately, later on he broke off, that longer tusk of his, and that was never found. But in his prime, he was an absolute magnificent elephant.
Yeah, I remember the story of Chokwane because I bought Darrell Balfour's book when I was about 16 years old. So that was one of the first introductions to big tuskers in my life, and that inspired me to, dream of visiting Africa one day and somehow photographing a big tusker. So that journey gradually progressed where I met you, I got to know you and bought your book, and that's how my story began. So my first big tusker encounter was in 2016, and I've continued to visit Africa and encounter tuskers. So I think both of us share that common passion. But for the viewers, I think maybe you might like to explain what we define as a big tusker in Africa, because a lot of Sri Lankans, as Sri Lankans, we don't have a lot of elephants with ivory. So we call any elephant, even with 2 feet of tusks, as a tusker. But in Africa, the females and the males have ivory. And what constitutes a big tusker? I think, Johan, you might know best because you're currently the big tusker expert, I would say, in Africa. So what is a big tusker?
All right. I think that's quite important to explain that to our viewers. So a big tusker or a great tusker, and nowadays they even call it a super tusker, is really any elephant, be it male or female, but it's mostly males, that carries ivory, or at least one tusk that weighs 100 pounds. Now, 100 pounds is roughly about 45 kilograms, all right? So any elephant that carries at least one tusk that weighs 45 kilogram, we now call a great tusker. That doesn't mean that an elephant that carries 70 or 80 pounds is not impressive. It's still a very impressive elephant. But I think the 100-pounder probably came from the olden days and unfortunately this still happens, and we can talk about that just now, but in the olden days when they used to hunt these bulls, and I still think today for any hunter, 100-pounder is probably at the top of his list, because these elephants, firstly are so, such magnificent beings, and such iconic animals. And nowadays, there are so few and far of them that if a trophy hunter can get his hands on a 100-pounder, I'm told that they would pay up to $1 million to actually hunt an animal like that. Now, it's quite interesting if we talk about 100-pounders in let's say 50, 60, 70 years ago, 100-pounders were fairly common. All right.
Okay.
If you would drive in Kenya or Tanzania, even Kruger, but mostly East Africa, you would easily, in an afternoon game drive, you would probably be able to see 2 or 3 big tuskers with fairly ease. Nowadays, sorry, that's my dog. Nowadays it is exceedingly difficult to actually see a big tusker, and we'll talk about this as well now. Just to put it into perspective, why these elephants currently, these big tuskers are so special. We know that in the 1800s, there were about 26 million elephants in Africa, all right? Which is quite a lot. In the 1950s already, they already went down to 4 to 5 million elephants, okay? So there's a massive drop, mainly due to hunting and poaching. Currently, the Great Elephant Census was finished in, I think, 2016, and currently, unfortunately, roughly the amount of elephants we have in Africa is not even 500,000. It's about 400,000. So if we take 400,000 elephants currently in Africa, and you look at how many big tuskers we have, and I'm going to be optimistic and say of that 400,000 elephants, we are lucky if we have between 30 and 40 big tuskers. So it's a 0.0010% of big bulls, big tuskers, where once they were numerous, very numerous.
Of course.
And the biggest reason why there's such a low percentage of them now is just because of hunting and poaching over years and years and years.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because they are the prime genetic stock in elephants in Africa, right? And as we are going through the slides, I think you can also see how the growth of ivory progresses in such a short time in the age when they get older. So the question is, do they get the large ivory in the twilight of their life? At what age would you normally find a big tusker?
All right. Okay, that's a very, very interesting question, Rajiv, and I think we must just spend a couple of minutes on this. So, because this is quite an important feature. So, if you can go back to that slide. So how this works basically is, and we're talking, we're generalizing here. There's a lot of factors that works in on the following that I will tell you, but let's generalize a bit. An elephant bull starts coming into must at a young age, 17 to 25 years of age. However, only at about 35 years of age does he come into must at a specific period of the year, constantly, for about 4 to 8 weeks a year, only at 35 years of age. So only later in his life, all right?
Right.
So that's from about 35 to 40 years of age. From 41 to 45 years of age, he actually comes into must very constantly for 8 weeks once a year. And from 46 to 50 years of age for 10 weeks per year. And let's say that's either in January always, or it's always in June, or always in August, whatever. All right, it differs between bulls. Okay. After 50 years of age, it starts dropping again to 8 weeks a year. So that will tell the viewers and the guys that are logged in specifically that those years between 40 and 50 is when he is in his prime reproductive breeding age. And that's very, very important to notice. So an elephant bull reaches his prime breeding age between 40 and 50 years of age.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. Point one. Point two is an elephant bull grows until he's about 40, 42 years of age. All right. So also exactly when he is in his prime reproductive period, then he is the biggest and best bull he can be. Thirdly, the ivory. The ivory starts growing exponentially from about 35 years of age. So exponentially meaning the ivory really takes off exponentially and starts growing really fast and gets thicker much faster than usually. And if you can look at that slide, that's Mashagadzi at the top left in 1998. You can see he's an average bull, all right? and a mere 5 years later, he's a 100-pounder. Okay.
Yeah.
So at 35 years of age, it starts growing really exponentially, so that easily at about 38 years of age, probably 40 years of age, these bulls can be 100-pounders. Okay. I think a bull like Duke was probably a 100-pounder a little bit earlier. As other bulls will probably be 100-pounders at 41, 42 years of age. There's Mandleve. You can see over a period of 20 years, how massively he's actually grown. But most of that ivory would have grown in the last 3, 4, 5 years. All right.
Yeah.
So,
and Mandleve has the highest, had the heaviest ivory, if I'm not mistaken, as well from Kruger, right?
Absolutely. So, Mandleve had the heaviest ivory ever in Kruger National Park. His one tusk was 68 kilogram, and the other one was 72 kilograms. So that's really, really big. So if we take that into account, and now you have a bull that becomes only reproductively in his peak at about 40 years of age, but at that same stage, he becomes a big tusker, a 100-pounder. And that's exactly at the stage, unfortunately, when we either hunt these bulls or poach these bulls, right? So therefore, and very few people know this, therefore, if we shoot him at 41, 42, 43, that's in his peak reproductive time, and we didn't give him time to transfer his genes to other elephants. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we only have 30 big tuskers out of 400,000 elephants today. And it is because bull elephants only breed later in their life. And you can say, well, elephants, we know that elephants, males and females, live unto the ripe age of about 60 years of age. Unfortunately, that's not 100% true. We often get females would live until 58, 60 years of age. But Cynthia Moss did very, very good research in Amboseli National Park, and I followed that up actually with big tuskers that has died in Kruger National Park. And in her book, she states that there's very few bulls that lives in the wild past the age of 52. And I saw that in Kruger National Park as well. All right. Okay. So they do not go until about 60 years of age. So therefore, you really only have a bull that can breed between the age of 40 and 52 for 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks per year only. So that's 2 months in a year only for about 10 years. And that's not a lot of time. In that time, he must still walk, he must try find, females, and then he must actually breed with them as well. So if we hunt them at an early age of about 40, 42, that's actually a big sin. If you do, and I, by no means am I a pro hunting, of these big bulls. Actually, I'm totally against it. But if you really have to shoot one of these big bulls, do that at the end of his life period, at about 50 or 51 years of age, after he has transferred his genes.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy when it comes to the hunting thing, and I think most of the wildlife lovers would agree that it's causing a lot of damage, and it's adding into the poaching problem as well, and this has been happening for hundreds of years, that selectively these amazing bulls have been eliminated from the gene pool. And it's such a shame, because there's only very few parks, isn't it, which do have big tuskers, and I think Kruger's the most famous out of them. So when it comes to Tuskers, this is actually a photograph I think, Doctor, you have taken of Duke, and is one of my favorite bulls. Would you like to tell some of your experiences with this amazing bull?
Yes, yes. I'm also like you. I really love Duke. I think he was a magnificent elephant. He was a very docile elephant. He was never really aggressive. I photographed him in my car. I photographed him on foot, and he never showed any hint of aggression. Duke must be probably the most photographed elephant in Kruger at all times. All right. One day we went to photograph him, and that was quite a couple of years ago, probably 5-6 years before he died. And we went with rangers, and they were quite keen that we would actually walk to him. And I said, you know what, there's 2 Askaris with him, for our viewers, the Askaris are younger bulls that will often hang around these big bulls, and there's a symbiotic relationship. The older bull will show them where the good feeding is and the good water is, and in turn for that, the young bulls are always on the lookout for danger because they're more alert. All right. And he had about 2 or 3 Askaris with him, and I said, I'm not so sure that we should approach him, and they said, no, yes, let's go, it will be quite a good experience. And eventually I said, okay, no problem. So we sneaked up on him, and we were again behind some bush, and we photographed him, and the wind turned and he smelled us, and I was in front, and I was, and I'm sure you also, when you get so caught up in photography, almost nothing else matters. It's just this one subject in front of you, and you put all your time and effort and your focus on this subject. And I was photographing him, and he smelled us, and he picked up his head, but he couldn't see us. So he obviously knew there was something there, and he started to come closer, with a typical high standing position. And I thought, I'll give him maybe a couple more paces, then I think we all should go. Came closer and closer, and I thought, and while I was photographing, I said, guys, what do you think? Shall we go? And there was just complete silence behind me. And eventually I looked around, and they were gone. Already,
Really?
way gone. And I said, guys,
They left you behind.
Told me. Anyhow, I also then retreated, because in the end of the day, it's about respect for these animals. If something goes wrong and this animal charges you and he hurts you or he kills you, then authorities say, yeah, but we've lost a life, he needs to be shot, and so on. And that's actually the very last thing we need. So I think, when you photograph these animals, one must also respect them. One must respect their, their immediate environment around them. But my personal experience, with these elder bulls, because they all, when we photograph them around about 45 to 50 years old, they know the ropes, they know vehicles, they know people. It's not like these young bulls that are 15 to 20 years old that wants to make a stand and that wants to give you a charge or so on. These bulls know about people and about cars, and most of them are really relaxed.
Yeah. Yes. Thing is, the older bulls seem to be almost wiser and more of a respectable being compared to the Askaris, who always tend to be aggressive, right? We are always scared of the askaris. Even in Sri Lanka, I've had experiences of old bull tuskers who are very docile, but you get these young bulls around them who are dangerous.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I will still, and I think as photographers, we all probably take risks every now and then. So I will still take a risk, or take a chance with an older bull, but with these young askaris, I think it's a no-no. They still have too much testosterone in them. They still want to prove stuff. Maybe we can just slightly go off the topic, and for our viewers. And I think one of the most dangerous animals on this planet is an elephant bull. Not necessarily a big tusker, but any elephant bull in must. I think the mistake we make is, that bull that's on the screen, Isilo. I mean, that bull, if he's not a must, he will walk past your car within 2 meters from your car. I promise you, within 2 meters of your car, and he will do absolutely nothing. So people, actually get into their minds that, this is a big animal, this is a big, beautiful bull elephant, and they're docile, and they don't charge, or they don't do anything, and that all bulls are like that. Well, all bulls probably are like that, except a big bull in must. All right, and I have to tell you, I do have the utmost respect for an elephant bull in must, because I think, and I keep my distance with them as well. That is really, in my personal opinion, one of the most dangerous animals that you can deal with in a car or on foot.
Of course. And for the viewers, just to explain what must is, it's actually a periodic state which the elephants get into, where their testosterone levels are at an all-time high, and they are very aggressive. So this is the time they have a competitive advantage competing with other males in seeking a mate for a female. So they are very aggressive during this time, and they secrete a very pungent, it's a liquid, isn't it, Johan?
Correct.
And that there's an elephant in must around. If you get that real stale, almost how you describe it, it's a very distinctive smell. I call it like a old cigar smell. So you don't want to mess with the pungent, yes. And so Isilo, of course, is also another beautiful tusker, which was also very tall as well, I believe, and a very big elephant. Unfortunately, he is no more as well. And as you mentioned before our chat, that they never found the ivory as well, which is a shame. So maybe somebody has smuggled them, across the border. Tembe Elephant Park is located between on the South African side, right next to Mozambique. So you never know where the ivory would have gone. So moving on to East Africa, where I've also traveled to, and Tsavo is one of the prime places which has the last remaining big tuskers, isn't it, Johan?
Yes, absolutely. So I think if anybody wants the opportunity to witness and to see a big tusker, then East Africa, in particularly Tsavo and Amboseli National Park, is probably the area to go to. I still think the park where I've probably seen the best ivory all over in general, male and female, has to be Tsavo National Park in southeast Kenya. There's an easy, when I started going to Tsavo, there was probably up to 7, 8 big tuskers there. And if you knew where to look, you could find them with fairly easily. And that's where I photographed all these big bulls until one day where I was driving down a gravel road, and like probably about 100 meters, 200 meters in front of me, this big elephant with this huge ivory crossed, and I sped up to there to see, you know, which bull is that. And as I got to that area, I saw that was actually a female.
Wow, I think we have a photograph as well.
I think, yeah, I think we do. And it was a female with ivory right to the ground. You know, something that I've never witnessed before. And there are actually more females like that in that area around Tsavo and Amboseli. So just, I think it's a park with magnificent ivory. And if you want to see big tuskers, that's definitely a place to visit.
Yes, the only thing about Tsavo which you need to note is it's a vast, massive park. And I unfortunately didn't have the luck when I did visit Tsavo. But it's such a huge park, and there's you know, so much area to cover. But we saw like a lot of elephants, and but I think you would agree it's one of the biggest parks in Africa, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is quite a big park. If you love elephants and you want to see elephants, that's probably a place to go. However, these bulls tend to walk only in a very specific area of Tsavo National Park. So if one concentrates in that area, you might be lucky, you know, to see one of these bulls.
And this is Tsavo was, I think, one of the most famous bulls in Tsavo. Unfortunately, his life ended in tragic circumstances, and I think he was poached in 2015. Is it around that time, right?
Yeah. So you know, Tsavo was another beautiful elephant. Again, one of those elephants that was a very docile elephant. I spent many hours and days with him in a car, but I spent many hours with him on foot in open grass, you know, almost like that, where he could clearly see me. And you know what? Not once did he even raise his head for me. You know, Tsavo was for me a very special elephant. And I was sad to know when the guy from the Tsavo Trust, Richard Moller, that does excellent work in Tsavo, looking after these bulls, when he contacted me to say that, you know, Tsavo was poached right on the eastern boundary of Tsavo, probably I think it was like 300-400 meters from the fence where he was unfortunately poached. And his ivory was never found.
Yeah, this is unfortunately it's a very graphic image, but it's the reality. This is a photograph of what remained of Tsavo when they found him. And Tsavo is close to the Somalian border, so they believe that poachers crossed the border, and this is how we lost a treasure for the natural world. And there still are big tuskers left, and this is, I think, a interesting photograph I noticed a few years ago of you. This is white Tsavo, right? If I'm not, is the name correct?
This is Tsavo 2.
Tsavo, okay. So I got that. But he also was poached, I think, during the same year, isn't it?
Yeah. So Tsavo 2 was unfortunately also poached. Very sad indeed. You know, just because Tsavo, Tsavo is such a huge park. I think it's probably fairly easy to get to them, or to you know, not to find them, but if you do find one, you know, to shoot them and to get away with the ivory. I think what the guys do is there's even, unfortunately, these these guys with lots of cattle that actually enters the park, and they bring what they call boras with them, which is a little motorbike. So they would shoot these bulls, they would chop out the ivory, and they would put it on the motorbike, and they would sped out of the park, through the bush very quickly. What's very interesting, in the olden days, 40, 50 years ago, there were a tribe that lived in the Tsavo area called the Walyangulu people. And they specialized in hunting these big bulls, but nothing much like we would hunt them. The Walyangulu would actually hunt them with a poison called akukanthra, which they got from a tribe called the Girihama on the coast of Kenya, on the eastern side. So first of all, they had to walk there all the way to the coast. They have to barter, buy some of this poison, walk all the way back, then find one of these big bulls, either spear him, or more probably they used a bow and arrow, and then they would track him for about a day or two, and then he would die, because what the poison did, it attacked the heart muscles, and he would kind of actually die from a heart attack eventually. All right. They would then chop out the ivory, and then they have to carry that ivory all the way to the coast to sell it and to buy food and maybe more poison and so on, and walk all the way back. So they didn't really had a major impact, on the numbers of these bulls. It's mostly when the Westerners came in and they brought guns in and so on, that we saw a heavy decline, unfortunately, in these bulls.
Oh, and it's happening even now that there's even despite the hard work of the Tsavo Trust and Richard Moller, that they still do find poached elephants, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, these, Rajiv, I can't agree more with you. These are really, for me, these are living monuments. They are a national heritage for the people of Kenya, for the people of Africa, and for the people of the world. So they must really be looked after and protected at all costs. So it is extremely sad to me, when one of these animals gets poached. What the viewers on the screen, see now is that Tusker that I spoke about, that female elephant.
Female.
And I mean, that is just, for people, and even for me, to have seen a female elephant with ivory like that is absolutely incredible. I mean, if we talk about 40 Tuskers male, Tuskers out of 400,000 elephants, you will probably, if you talk about females like this, you would probably go down to 8 maybe, or 6. So they are even more special, to see absolute amazing elephant like that.
Definitely. I remember coming across a big female with big tusks in Amboseli. Unfortunately, the tips of her tusks were sawn off. I don't know for what reason, but she was from the famous T family. That is Tim's, the big tusker Tim's family. I cannot recall the name, but she was related to Tim and that family. When I seen photographs, her tusks did almost touch the ground, but now they're sawn off for some reason. But there are females like that left in Africa, which is amazing to see. And it is my favorite tusker and my late friend Tim. I think you and I both have some memorable experiences with him, and also Tolstoy behind him. So you would have encountered him more than once, right? I believe.
Yeah. So I fully agree with you. I think Tim lived around Amboseli National Park. Unfortunately, he died this year. And correct me, Rajiv, I think he was 51 years old only.
Yes.
Again, we go back to that 52 thing, 52 years, and you can see already the research that she's done. But Tim must be one of the most spectacular and special elephants that I've photographed over the last 20 years. Again, he was a very docile elephant. We spent time with him in the car. We spent time with him on foot. He was never, ever aggressive. He was a huge elephant. I think what made Tim so impressive as well, I don't think the viewers can really appreciate it from that photo of mine, but Tim, if we talk about a tall elephant, all right, the tallest elephant ever on record was the elephant that was shot in Angola. He wasn't a Tusker, but he was just very tall. He was 3.98 at the shoulder. All right, that was the first elephant ever on record. Now, if the normal bull elephant is around about 3.2 meters at the shoulder, and you start getting quite a big elephant if it goes to 3.4. Now, Tim. If I estimated him, he must have been at least 3.4, 3.5 at the shoulder. Oh. So, not only was he a big Tusker, but he was a massive big elephant. So he was in stature. To see him and to park next to him was just an absolute incredible experience. And to see him like that with another 100-pounder, which is Tolstoy there, left of him, was amazing. I had the real privilege a couple of years ago to photograph Tim, Tolstoy, and Little Male, that was also a 100-pounder, together, and they actually walked together. Unfortunately, a Little Male was shot. I think it was last year or the beginning of this year.
2017.
Okay, on the suspicion that he killed a farmer. So that was quite sad. But Tim died earlier this year. He actually got stuck in mud in the beginning of this year. Hey, Rajiv.
Last year, Johan.
Last year. And it was due to the very, very good work of the rangers of the Big Life Foundation, that, by the way, does brilliant work in that entire area to look after these big bulls, and they pulled him out. And I still thought I'm gonna photograph him again this year, but he sadly passed away. But Tim is Tolstoy is still there. And then there's also a bull that looks very similar to Tim, but there's just a little younger. I think he's 40.
Correct.
Yeah, he's 48 years old, I think, and he's got the same shape, size of ivory as Tim. He's not as big yet, and he's called Craig. So I think give him, he's not even 50 yet. So give him another 2-3 years. And he will be a really magnificent. I mean, he's already quite a magnificent elephant, but he will grow, quite exponentially over the next few years as well, and probably become as big as Tim.
Yeah, I had the honor of seeing Tim twice in my life. First in 2016, he was in the park. He was in Mas, and I never forget that day where he crossed the road right in front of our van. And it was such an amazing sight. And the second time was last year. So I managed to make contacts with Big Life Foundation, and we took a group from Classic Travel. And one of the main features of the tour was that we'll try to see the legendary Tusker Tim. And I never thought we would actually find him because he was outside the park. But thanks to the rangers who look after him, we did manage to get special access to see him. And the second time was even more special because we got really close to him, and I got down on foot. And while he was feeding on the bushes, and then you noticed there was another elephant behind him, and then it was Craig. So it was amazing to see both these big boys together. And what I was warned by the ranger that Tim is very docile, but be careful of Craig. Craig tends to charge. And just as he said that, so me and few of my clients, we're trying to photograph Craig, like in this instance, just as he mentioned that this guy just put his head up and looked at us with the ears wide open like this and just started rumbling. And we just slowly backed away. We realized we don't want to be. He was aware of our presence, and he was making a rumbling noise. So we just kept distance from Craig, and but they are both amazing animals. And unfortunately, like you said, Tim is no more with us. It was actually 2 weeks before I was to fly to Kenya to see, hopefully try and see him. And the reason of his death, they say, is a twisted gut. As a veterinarian, what would you say? Like, is that a normal occurrence? Is it common for elephants to get such issues?
No, I don't think it is common. So it was quite sad when I heard that it had a twisted gut. You know, twisted gut is a very common occurrence in horses, but it's we don't hear often of it in elephants. So you know, maybe Tim could have lived another year, maybe 2 years at least. But yeah, it was sad when he got, you know, when he died. I think I just want to go back quickly, Rajiv. I see one of our viewers asked, do I still recommend that you shoot, you know, tuskers after the age of 50 years of age? I don't think you should, you know, shoot any big tusker ever. You know, whether he's 50 years of age, whether he is 52, whether he lives a long and fruitful life like Duke. Duke was actually probably closer to 60 when he died, so he was one of those outliers. But you know, I think these elephants are so special, and as we said, you know, such living monuments that it would be extremely sad if you allow anybody to hunt or to shoot a big bull like this. You know, what I really meant was if you in a hunting area and you as an outfitter knows of this big bull in this area, and by unfortunate circumstances you do get a permit to shoot this bull, wait until he's at least 50 years old if you do want to hunt him. But I think for me it's always a very, very sad occurrence, you know, when I see that a living monument and a magnificent iconic animal like this has either been shot or poached. I think that's just a complete no-no.
And they're such intelligent animals as well. They're intelligent beings with years, and especially big tuskers would have years, decades of experience, which they also pass on to the askaris, and you know, so on. And it's such a shame that someone would take pleasure, in my opinion, also to just pose for a photograph with a dead body, and all that remains is the tusk. So, and I'm glad that countries like Kenya have banned trophy hunting completely, and it's that's maybe one of the reasons why we still have few tuskers remaining, and also besides Amboseli and Tsavo, I think Chulu Hills is also another place which is well known for his big bulls, and this boy is quite famous for coming to one of the lodges, right? And this is 1 ton.
Yes. The Chulu Hills lies about halfway between Amboseli and Tsavo. There's an amazing lodge there called Old Donya Lodge. If you really want to spoil yourself,
It's a
to
luxury lodge.
stay in luxury and to have real good game viewing, you go to Aldonia Lodge, and then you have a fairly good chance of seeing this bull called One Ton. He's also a magnificent bull, and what he's actually started to do in the last couple of years is one of the owners has got a swimming pool, and he decided that he quite likes the water from the swimming pool, so he regularly goes to the house of this owner, and he drinks right from the swimming pool. And I was there once when this owner called me and said, "You must come quickly." And he was right at the swimming pool. And Rajiv, that was probably one of the most amazing experiences I've had in my entire life, when he was standing right at the swimming pool, and the owner said to me, "No, go closer, go closer." And I went, but this is really close. And he said, "I know this elephant. This elephant has been coming here for years. Trust me, you can go closer." And I went so close that I had to put my camera on wide angle to photograph him. So he got very, very used to to people around the swimming pool. But very interestingly, only around the swimming pool. The moment he leaves the swimming pool, if you try and get close to him, he's completely back to a normal elephant again. But around the swimming pool, he's very, very docile, very relaxed, and you can actually get very close to him and just sit there and in awe experience this elephant that stands right in front of you and actually drinks water. It was the most amazing experience I've had in my entire life.
It's unbelievable. And also, when you look at this picture, you can say if it's a left tusked or right tusked elephant, right? From how one looks more worn out, is that I think the right tusk is more worn out, right? And
that's right. So, Rajiv is quite correct there. So elephants are either left-handed or right-handed, or they can be ambidextrous. Now, if we look at One Ton, clearly, he is right-handed, because his right tusk is much, much shorter than his left tusk. So he uses his right tusk much more to break bark off trees, or to even dig for roots or stuff like that. So he uses that quite a lot, and it breaks off or it wears off, and that's why it becomes so short, because ivory is actually quite soft. Unfortunately, what sometimes happens is what happened with Duke, is that because they wear that tusk, or use that tusk such a lot, for instance, him on the right hand side, that tusk might break off, and it might break off quite short. So immediately then he become a left tusk elephant, and he will use his left tusk then quite a lot. And unfortunately with Duke, he broke off his one tusk first, and then he actually broke his other one. So when he died, he only had two short pieces of ivory. Luckily, the ones that were broken off were recovered, but he died with quite short ivory.
It would have been hard to determine the exact weight of his full ivory, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Tim, had some of the heaviest ivory. The numbers I got was 71 kilograms on one side and about 63 kilograms on the other, which is very heavy for an elephant, for a tusker.
Yes. So that was quite heavy ivory. Very impressive. The weight of the ivory really goes on the thickness at the lip line. So where the ivory, where you start seeing the ivory, we call that the lip line. And it's the thicker the ivory is there, the heavier the ivory is. Exactly. So, and that's also genetics. You will see some, some elephants with very long ivory, but they're quite thin, and they might not be 100-pounder. For instance, a female, they will have thin ivory, although they touch the ground. That will not be 100-pounder, but she will, she's still a very magnificent elephant. And then you will get other elephants like Mandleve, which had big ivory, but it's very thick at the lip line, and that really puts the weight on the ivory. I see there's one of our viewers that asked, what is the biggest tusker currently probably in the world on Africa? And I saw, Rajiv, that you had a photo of him up just recently, and I think that's an elephant called Lugard that
in Tsavo.
Walks in Tsavo. And the only reason why I say I think he's probably the biggest in the world currently is he's got very thick ivory that runs all the way to the bottom, and it stays thick. He's not a very...
Let me just see if we can find a picture.
Sure, he's not a very...
this guy.
There he is. Okay, so he's not a very easy elephant to see, and he's one of those elephants that are quite shy. Maybe because he walks in an area of Tsavo where there's not a lot of vehicles, so it's not easy to see this elephant. But I think currently he's probably the biggest in Africa.
Okay. And I think besides this Kenya, you have also a few elephants in Tanzania, and I still remember I asked you a long time ago, I don't have a lot of money, but if I do go on a trip, what was the best chances back in the day? This is about 10 to 12 years ago. And you said Ngorongoro crater would have been a great place back in the day if we were to visit. And Babu was, I think, one of the tuskers who I was really keen to see. He had some beautiful tusks, and there was about 3 or 4 bulls in Ngorongoro in Tanzania, and this is one of the tuskers. I think you photographed the skull of the bull, and you also saw him alive as well, right? Tumpole, is it? Yeah.
Yes. So this is Tumpole that died in Ngorongoro crater. He died of natural causes. The guy that's holding the ivory there he was a very good friend of mine, a ranger in the crater called Samueli Slegerai. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago because of diabetes. But I will never forget, that previous photograph you showed of Babu. He was, Samueli was with me in the car there. And again, Babu was such a docile elephant. We parked far from him because I didn't want to disturb them. And we were just taking pictures and spending time with them. And Babu actually turned, in that photograph, you can see that all these askaris are, facing the other way. But Babu actually turned and came towards us, almost like he wanted to come investigate or, come spend some time with us. And, that picture that you see there is probably 3 meters from us. And I still remember, poor Samueli tapping me on the shoulder and saying, Bwana, my heart rate is going very high now. But Babu never showed any aggression. He actually stood there where you can see in the picture, he stood there and he was just feeding, and eventually he just walked slowly around the car. So I do think, these elephants also, they come and investigate. They want to see, what this vehicle is doing. They can sniff the vehicle. And as you mentioned, previously, We know for a fact that elephants are amazingly intelligent animals. We underestimate the intelligence of an elephant massively. All right. So these elephants know, that we probably we mean no harm to them. So, he comes closer and he spends some time. I have a picture of a woman that did research in Zimbabwe on wild elephants. And, she spent so much time with them that the matriarch eventually came up to her vehicle so that she could touch that animal, a wild elephant. So, these elephants are not stupid. They're really very intelligent.
Yeah. And this photograph of the skull shows the size and thickness of what we are talking about next to a human, which is amazing because you don't see that scale and size when you're looking at a photograph of a live elephant. And so this bull, did he die of natural causes, I presume? Yeah.
Say again, Rajiv?
He died of Tumpole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Tumpole died of natural causes. I must say, I have to mention that in the Ngorongoro crater, the anti-poaching activities from the rangers are exceptional. I do not, I speak under correction, Rajiv, but I do not think that they've had any animals die from poaching, rhino, elephant, lion in the crater for many, many years now. So they really do a brilliant job there.
That's a great success story, isn't it? Yeah. And so now, so besides the Tuskers we are talking about, we are going to move to Central African Republic. So before talking about the forest elephants, I just had a small diagram just to explain that in Africa there are two specific species of elephants. So the bulls we were talking about all along were from the savanna elephant, scientific name Loxodonta africana. But there's another species who are found deep in the Central African region, the rainforest of Central Africa and West Africa, called the forest elephant, who is slightly more different in appearance. It's smaller, but also has impressive tuskers as well. And Johan, you visited Central African Republic and in the famous Zangabai to see these amazing elephants. And I think one of the most iconic guys you saw was Pom, right?
Yes.
So what are your experiences from this different part of Africa?
All right. So as Rajiv says, if you want to see forest elephants, you have to go to Central Africa or West Africa in the rainforest to see these elephants. They look a bit different. They're smaller. They're about half a meter to 1 meter shorter at the shoulder. They also have more rounded ears and they all have a more compact body. However, it's still a beautiful elephant. And if you like elephants, probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had was to go to this place called Zangabai in a national park called Zanga, which lies in the southern tip of the Central African Republic. If you go there towards the end of their dry season, which is the end of January, February area time period, you can see up to 50 elephants in that bai. And a bai, B-A-I, is basically a clearing in the forest. And they come there specifically, you can't see it on that picture, but they come there specifically to eat some of the clay. Because at the end of the dry season, there's not a lot of fruits, so they have to eat apparently more toxic plants, and they come basically to that bai to eat some of that mud that you see there, which help, I think, neutralize those toxins. And at the time that I was there, I think I saw about 5 or 6 big tuskers. of which palm was one. But, just to spend time in that bay, there's a lookout where you sit the whole day, and as the elephants come in and they leave again, is really, it's a magnificent experience. And I think one thing that was really wonderful for me to visit this area is the amount of communication and interaction between elephants, which I've never seen anywhere else in Africa except in Zangabai. Apart from that, you will see other animals in the bay like bongo, sitatunga, forest buffalo, red river hawk, giant forest hawk. You will see monkeys, and the next day there are more bays, and you can also do gorilla trekking, where you can see the western lowland gorilla. So to visit this area is it's an amazing experience to see these these animals that you not normally see in the savannah area of Africa. I see there's a couple of questions from the from the audience. Yes. That picture that we showed of Babu, unfortunately, he's not alive anymore. He also died of natural causes. And then, maybe Rajiv, that's something that you can also comment on. I see there's one person that asked, what kind of lenses do we use? Probably I've got a couple of lenses, and they all cost money, too much money, obviously. I think,
unfortunately,
unfortunately, but I think the lens that I use probably the most from my vehicle, or even when I photograph these animals on foot, is a 100-400 lens. It's quite versatile, and I know it hasn't, it's not the same quality as a 300mm f2.8, but at this specific trip of mine in the Central African Republic, I actually did have a 300 f2.8 lens with me. And I'm serious if I say I nearly dropped it in the river on purpose, because it just got too heavy. All right. Yeah. Because you have to walk through the rainforest for about 45 minutes to this bay. Whereas 100-400 is versatile. It's fairly good quality. It's fairly lightweight. And I can carry it with a monopod on my shoulder really easily. So I love my 100-400.
Yeah, I would agree. 100-400 would be a go-to lens. I actually have a bigger version. It's a 200-400. It's very heavy. I think it's about twice as heavy as the 300 2.8. But because I'm able to just handle it a bit, handheld it a bit better. But of course, the range 200-400 is also perfect for my photography, especially for elephants. And even if they come really close, I just zoom all the way back. And I think even for you, you just zoom all the way back if they do get too close. So you don't need a 600 or a 500 necessarily for elephants, not at all. So I would recommend a medium range lens.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing that I've changed over recently, I went to mirrorless cameras. And I went to Sony. Man, it's absolute. I used to have Canon, the normal Canon DSLR, and I actually gave those to my wife. I'm in love, with my mirrorless, Sony cameras, and I think those are brilliant cameras.
Yeah. So I think the lighter weight it is, it's easy for you to get about, especially if you're into travel, and if you have to walk or get about. A lighter lens is always important, and mirrorless really helps with that. Going back to the forest elephants, you said that the communications between the elephants was quite noticeable in the Zangabai. And just want to know, do you feel that the forest elephants are more vocal compared to the savanna elephants? Or
Absolutely, absolutely, Rajiv. I've never ever heard, such vocality in my
Mhm.
entire life than in Zangabai. The amount of rumbles and screaming and screeching and communication between them, and all the time, as you actually walk to the bay, you actually hear, as it comes closer and closer, you can hear all the communication between them, and it goes on the entire day. So yeah, they were very vocal, and I've never heard that from from our savanna elephants here in Africa.
and there seems to be quite a higher number of elephants with long ivory in the forest species. It's quite I just note, although I have not seen any in real life, I noticed most of the bulls have relatively long ivory in the species.
Yeah, I think traditionally they were not hunted because
Oh,
they occur in these dense rainforest, and I think it was
right.
probably much easier to get to our savanna elephants in the bush, in
Mm,
these open savannas,
right.
to get to them. Unfortunately, Rajiv, and to our viewers, that has changed over the last 10, 15 years. I know, for instance, in 2013, there was a
Mhm.
paper published by very good researchers where they've noted that from 2002 to
Mhm.
2011, we lost 62% of our forest elephants,
Oh,
which is a massive
yeah.
problem. All right. And, one thing that we can just quickly touch on, for instance,
Mhm.
how does that affect, for instance, you in Sri Lanka, the person in America, me in South Africa, how does it affect us losing 62% of forest elephants? And it's actually quite simple. The forest elephants of Africa are also they are also called the tree planters of the Congo. All
Yeah.
right, the tree
Got it. Yeah.
planters of the Congo. So all the seeds and fruits they eat has a lot of them has to pass through the digestive system of a
Mhm.
forest elephant to be able to germinate successfully or more easily. All right.
Mhm.
So if we've lost 62% of our forest elephants, that mean, not tomorrow or in 5 years' time, but maybe in 15 years' time or 25 years' time, that will have a direct influence on the amount of trees in the rainforest.
Mhm.
Why is that important? Well, the rainforest, whether it's in South America or in Africa, are actually the thermostats of the world. All right.
Mhm.
It has a massive effect on our weather systems and on our temperature. So by losing forest elephants, we have a direct effect on the weather patterns eventually across the world. And people don't make that connection. So that's why it's really important to also, protect, the species.
Of course. And unfortunately, Central Africa has it's one of the most conflicted areas with a lot of wars and yeah, civil wars happening. And unfortunately, it's in the prime rainforest habitats in the world. So it's such a shame about that. And 60% is just a huge blow. I think it's astounding, as you said, how important they are for the maintenance of the forest and the growth of the trees. That impact we might feel it maybe another 20, 30 or more years later, right? It's just something
Correct.
need to think about. And so we've gone through a lot of the impacts of poaching and protecting the big tuskers, and also our passion for the big bulls. So now we move to another side, especially to do with the work which you do is treating and helping to protect the rhinos. And this is a very powerful image, I would say, seeing so many skulls of poached rhinos lined up. And where was this taken, Dr. Johan?
So Rajiv, yeah, this is this is quite a sad topic. So this image was taken in Kruger National Park, where there was over 100 skulls that were lined up like that, and this was already a couple of years ago. Over the last, the poaching of rhino, basically in Southern Africa or South Africa, started basically in 2008. It's still continuing. It reached its peak I think in 2014 or there, where we lost about 1,200 rhino per year. There were about 4 to 5 years where we lost more than 1,000 each year.
Is that only in South Africa, or is that across the continent?
Okay, so these numbers that I give you is basically only in South Africa.
Wow, that's
okay. So we lost for a couple of years in a row, which is 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. Each year we lost more than 1,000 rhino, which is not sustainable. That is just not sustainable. Before 2008. They were poaching, and we know there will always be poaching, but it was at a very low level where we lost probably 5 or 20 or 14 animals a year. And that's by no means correct, to do that, but at least that is okay-ish, if I can call it that. But to lose 500 or 1,000 animals a year,
crazy.
It's just completely crazy.
Yeah, and these are you work here. You found an organization called Saving the Survivors, and here we see you're in your profession as a veterinarian treating a rhino. So basically, most of the rhinos have been their horns have been hacked off, right, while they are alive. Maybe you can just tell what really happens.
Okay, so for all our viewers, we are sorry, for you to see these images, but unfortunately, I think it's important to to show you this, because this is not an African problem. This happens in Asia as well. So what happens is these animals get shot. And obviously, most of the time they die, and the horns get hacked off. But often the poacher would just stun the animal because he's not a good shot, or when he pulled the trigger, the rhino moved, and the animal basically gets stunned and falls down. And in the next 5 to 10 minutes, he then uses either a knife or they use an axe, and they remove the horn while the animal is still alive. Now that is intensely painful for that animal, and we know that from work that we've done on these animals, but we can also sometimes see that when we find some of these animals, they've been hacked all over their back, and that is because while they hack and try and remove the horn, these animals try to get up, and exactly like that, try to get up and get away from this poacher, and then they just hack them indiscriminately on their back to try and actually keep them down. So these are horrific injuries, and the people that commit these crimes are just, it's really bad. I don't even think there's words to describe this. So I founded a non-profit company in 2012 to work on these animals and to try and find ways to heal these injuries. what is amazing is that we can, we lost, for instance, 1,000 animals in a year, but we actually don't know anything about these animals, Rajiv. The only thing we know about rhinos is we know how to immobilize them, to dart them. We know that the horn is keratin, almost like your fingernail, and we know the reproductive system. But anything else, we don't know the anatomy of the face. We don't know how it looks here, where the blood vessels, where the nerves are. We don't know if a rhino gets shot in the limb. How's the anatomy in the limb? Because now I must go as a veterinary surgeon and I must cut out this bullet. Now, when you break an arm or a leg, you go to a doctor and he operates on you. He knows exactly where your nerves run, where your blood vessels run. We don't know that on rhino. It's never been described. All right. So I founded this, this NGO, this non-profit, to try and treat these animals and to find out how we can treat them successfully, and also to do some of this research to help us, to help ourselves, but also other veterinarians to treat gunshot wounds and to treat these kind of injuries. The animal that is on the screen, that was just on the screen now, is an animal called Hope that was poached in the Eastern Cape here in South Africa, horrifically, badly. And we started treating her, and she learned, she taught us a massive amount about how those injuries heal, what do we have to do, what we cannot do, because this was a world first. We didn't have a book to go to and to see, on page 52, how to heal a rhino. So all these things we had to actually find out, for ourselves, which obviously takes a little bit of more time than when you read it in a book. But I think we've had some great successes up till now. We are still treating some of these rhino. We also treat some with, gunshot wounds, some with fractures, and we have a fair amount of success.
Yeah, this photograph is something I still can't believe you managed to get it done. Like, you put a rhino on an operating table. I still don't know, as a veterinarian, it's an amazing feat. And could you tell a bit more on the story of this photograph?
Yeah, so this was a sub-adult rhino that got colic, and as we spoke, like Tim got a twisted gut. This rhino also got a twisted gut, and rhinos are very similar to horses in certain aspects. All right, so we know that horses get twisted guts, and rhino also get twisted guts. So we operated one with a twisted gut, and this specific rhino, what happened to him is he walked past a pole and the pole stuck into his joint, and it caused a septic joint, an infection into his joint, and he didn't want to walk at all. So we took him to hospital. We put him on the table. The one challenge was, because of his horn, how does he lie, on his back? So we had to position him a little bit further on the table. And then we did an operation on him, which our guests would also have, for instance, when you have a knee op, or when you, for instance, the rugby players or the cricket players, when they get a little chip in their knee or in their elbow, we make two small incisions in the joint, and we go in with a camera. We flush out that entire joint. We remove all the gunk inside the joint, flush it out, and then we suture it up. And this, this little rhino responded very well to that treatment, and recuperated 100%.
Wow, it's amazing for us to see, because I've never seen a rhino on operating table, and it's amazing that veterinarians of your caliber and your colleagues are doing almost the impossible, and for no profit at all, just to help wildlife. And I think this shows all, encompasses what you do. And it's amazing that, so many lives are able to be saved. I'm sure that many your lives are lost along the way. And as you said, the numbers of rhinos being poached is astounding, and you're doing all you can from little, the capacity you have to do it, which is amazing. And any other message you can, when it comes to the poaching problem of rhinos, any hope that we have for the survival of the species? Any words from you on that?
Yes, you know what, Rajiv? Sometimes when I see these kind of injuries, you also have bad days, and you get despondent and so on. But there's always hope. There's always hope. So I think us as a collective of people, we should never lose hope. And I think, not I think, I know that if we all stand together, that we can really make a difference in this world, whether it be, with rhino or with elephant or with pangolin, but if we all stand together, because this is not an African problem. If you look to India, for instance, in Kaziranga, they've had some recent poachings there as well. So this is a worldwide problem, and if we want to show our children, this natural heritage of these iconic animals, I think we must all stand together and club in together, to look after our wildlife. And it's definitely possible. We must just not lose hope, because we can do it, and we can, prevent this from happening.
Of course. And there was a question from the audience, from you, what you think that there was an increased number of poaching happening during the pandemic, and has like the guard or the protection waned during this lockdown? Is that the reason why this has happened?
Yeah, I think so. We definitely saw there was a little bit of an increase, I think, in Namibia. I hear there was a bit of an increase in Botswana, but if you look at South Africa, specifically Kruger National Park, there was actually a major decrease in poaching. And if you look at some of our other parks like Addo and Pilanesberg, there was a major decrease in poaching. But I know in certain other parks, like in, I think some parks in East Africa as well, there was, unfortunately, there was an increase. And I think it's because, people were in lockdown. They were not allowed to, to travel. So there are no rangers in the field, and that just, made it open, unfortunately, for these poachers to kill these animals.
So even in Kaziranga, I got news that there was poaching, whilst last year there was 0 rhinos killed. So I think we are short for time. So I think basically, thank you so much for everyone for listening in, and thank you, Dr. Johan, for joining us. And for everyone out there, if you'd like to learn more about the work Dr. Johan does, you can visit www.savingthesurvivors.org, or visit the Saving the Survivors page, which you can follow on Facebook, and you can spread the word if you'd like to donate or do anything to help, because this is a non-profit organization which does a lot of work for wildlife in Africa, and a great ambassador for conservation. So thank you so much once again, Dr. Johan. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to have known you, and we hope that we can work together to achieve our dream of conservation for all species.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much, Rajiv. Thank you for the invitation, and it was brilliant talking to you guys. And thank you to everyone that was listening or that logged in. I quite like to share some of the knowledge I have. I don't know everything, but it's always good to to speak to other people, to hear their opinions, and to share the little knowledge we have. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening in. And yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Dr. Johan and Rajiv, for this. This was truly interesting. It was a truly interesting session. I think I speak behalf of all when I say it was quite illuminating. We would like to especially thank Dr. Johan for being part of this and for helping us make this webinar an absolute success. And of course, Rajiv, thank you for taking part and taking this session through successfully. Finally, we'd also like to thank all our participants for joining with us today. As for traveling of any kind, 2020 hasn't been the best year for that, but we are hoping that things will turn around soon and travelers can once again experience the world. We are planning many unique travel experiences and wildlife excursions for you, especially tours to Kenya, where you'll get to explore off the beaten tracks and experience nature in all its glory. So do follow our Classic Travel Facebook page and Instagram page for updates and more exciting news. As we wrap up, I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.